Alright, manga fans, today we're going to talk about 100 ghost stories, a great horror anthology, and some of my horror recommendations. So, I've been reading horror for quite some time. Sweden is a very cold and great place to read horror because there's weather out there that tries to kill you, and it's very, very dark most years. So, scary things could be out in the woods or in the city park. Your imagination can really run wild in the darkness here. So, 100 ghost stories is a horror anthology. Lots of short stories with an interesting twist or idea, and the concepts here are very, very interesting. So you could have something like a man that is certainly terrified by the slip and slide at the park. Why is this? A girl visits a mirror that's supposed to show the future. She can't see anything, just a regular mirror. What's going on? A boy discovers a small box where anything you wish for is magically teleported, but can you wish for something that you really shouldn't? So many of these ideas and many of these stories have really stuck with me. It's not the most detailed drawn manga, it's not the most beautiful, but it's still very well drawn and very creative. The panels are really impressive to look at, very, very exciting when you get to them. There's also a crazy range of emotions. Some of the stories are just gross, some are terrifying, and a lot can be very tragic and beautiful because it's often people reunited spirits from their past, so quite sweet to read. The manga has also been compared to Junji Ito's work. Both are disgusting in some part, and they can also be very funny, and they can also be very tragic, but 100 Ghost Stories is a lot of more folk horror and more modern. It's also not as detailed and beautiful panels as Junji Ito, and it doesn't have this creepy slow burn, but short horror stories, short story. I would recommend this over Junji Ito's though, because there's so much story and a very short time, and it has a very wide range. I think Junji Ito is sort of like a little bit more limited in emotional range for how his stories and the characters experience things. Alright, so over to other short stories I would like to recommend, or other stories in general that are horror related. A Drifting Classroom is made by Kazuo Umezu, that Junji took a lot of inspiration from. It's about these elementary schools drift off into a strange, evil world. Their whole school goes into this world, and they have to try to survive. Some people might be a little against the fact that kids get hurt in this one, so if you find that too horrible to watch or read, I would recommend against this one. But it is a very, very scary story and very exciting to follow. The monster can be a little bit silly sometimes, but they can also be very terrifying, and the humans can be really disturbing as well. It's a bit like the mist. Are scared humans worse than lurking monsters outside? Big question. The protagonist's relationship to his friends and his mom is very touching, so that's also great. So I can actually really warmly recommend this one if it sounds like something you will be okay with. Another gem is Bakusai Closet, about two girls that travel into their dreams to another dimension, and it's generally quite lighthearted and quite cute, but this also makes the horror when it shows up really, really effective and really catching you off guard. It's actually a cosmic horror because it's like big world that they can't really quite stand, and it might be out to get them. I've seen it have done some cosmic horror stuff like Planet Ranima, but it's very, very much more effective in this one. The body horror and this Lovecraftian strange world is really terrifying when you get to it. It's not a super long read, but extremely memorable. It's one of my favorite horrors. Tokyo Ghoul is often recommended for horror fans, and I would say it's not really a great horror story. It has a lot of great horror about the meat-eating ghouls, and it can be very gory and very tense, but the focus really isn't horror. It's more about this, I would call it almost emo style 2000s manga with like a lot of emotion, lots of action, not really a strong like happy story to tell like Naruto, or a message like a classical shonen, but it's still a very nice experience, and it's still very entertaining. I would like to end with Shikido. It's a very classic vampires come to a small isolated community like Salem's Lot or Midnight Mass, but it's very tense, very well done, and you really root for this like main hero character, and they really, really have to fight to survive in story, which is really great. It's also quite a smart and strategic manga in how they fight against these vampires that really seem to have the upper hand most of the time in the story. It's very tense, very good. I realize I actually have one last manga to recommend, which is Manhole. Manhole is not very well known, but it's extremely creepy. It's almost like Seven, like this horror mixed thriller kind of thing, and the concept is very interesting. These people show up that are almost brainless, like zombies, and there's this type of strange slow outbreak, and it's quite interesting to follow these two cops that try to figure out what's been happening, and it's a very likable couple of characters and a very well drawn, very detailed, beautiful manga that I can warmly recommend. And it's quite short, so it's like short and sweet, very nice. And if you like what I do here, yes, like and subscribe.